Hi, I'm Michael Nadlin from Market Lead, and today's video is an amazing one. It's a chat with my great and amazing friend, Cory Lindholm. He is one of the best in the world at Google Ads and is an authority on Performance Max at the moment. If you know this guy, you followed him on LinkedIn, you see his posts, he goes deep with everything, down to the APIs, to the feeds, to the ad creative, to everything. This guy knows his shit. So him and I chat regularly. We chat once a week, and this is just a video of ours that we were just recording of us chatting, and then we thought we'd actually release. So follow his stuff on LinkedIn. If you're a marketing manager, business owner, you run an e-commerce, or you're a specialist, I guarantee you'll get something from this. We go deep, but even from the start, he's blowing my mind with new strategies and workarounds that I had no idea about, which is making me better immediately. So I hope you get something from this. I know you will. So let's jump in and enjoy.
That sounds super ignorant right now because I should be like an expert at this stuff. But you said PMax is allowing a single like product only. Like
yes.
When was that announced?
So my mind is blown too. So you have to look at. I'm always wondering like should we do this as like a part of the podcast stuff? But either way, it's cool. This can be our little
chat, man. We can segment stuff out. Like let's just.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Perfect.
Yeah.
So there is this. So I really like to like dig into the Google API documentation because there's all these like hidden nuggets that most of us don't know when we're managing Google Ads accounts because it's not like in the normal docs. It's only in the API documentation. And in there, the PMax for retail article that shows like how to set up the code and everything, it has a thing that says if you don't add assets, blah, 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 basically it will run just like smart shopping. So
wow.
So that was like, oh my goodness. So here's the thing though. People are like, oh, that doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work if you create a brand new campaign and that's your first asset group. It'll require, it'd be like, you have to put in assets. What you could do is you can, if you really wanted to go like this, hold on to smart shopping as long as possible, you would create a new campaign, PMax, you've never done it before. You create like basically like a fake asset group, just put some headlines, put some descriptions, image, video, whatever. Pause it right away and then create another asset group. Don't put anything in that except the final URL. And then boom, now you've got a product only feed, which is basically just only going to be hitting the shopping network, working the same way as smart shopping.
Mate, that is unreal. Mate, that's why we need absolute nerds like you and I, or more likely you, to look through the API documentation to set that stuff. That is unreal, man. Like, thank you for sharing that. Like, I wasn't even aware of that. But
yeah,
and is that been going around in the networks, or is that just something you came across?
No, it just started. Like a buddy of mine that's also super nerdy at this, he shared it with me, and I was like, wait, that can't work because I tried it. You know, I was like I try to break things all the time just to see if I can get away with it. And it didn't work for me just because I had done it that way, where it was like the brand new campaign. I hadn't tried it the other way around, where you like create one, you pause it, and then you just do a new one. So pretty awesome. Yeah. So I think that's why you have to like at this level, when you get super advanced, you have to keep your ear out there for new people that are popping up because there's so many smart people out there that just don't post very much. And just like listen for those little things and then just get creative and like look past the normal documentation. Look at the API stuff, even if you're not a developer, see what else is out there. Just try to get your hands on like all the information you can. It's pretty surprising what's out there. Yeah.
No, that is amazing. And have you successfully done it?
Mm-hmm. Sure have. There's a couple techniques I'm doing right now. One is where actually I think Soul 8 started doing one too like this. So you can you have an existing Performance Max campaign, whether it's doing it good or bad, this could just be a test. Create that asset group that's just the product only feed. You can segment by product category, product theme, just like you're doing with the rest of your PMax campaign, if that's applicable, or if it's all your products, it's all your products. That's one way you could do things and test that out. The other way would be to basically have two campaigns. This is like the lower budget things. I got this one from Soul 8. So you have two different campaigns. You've got one that has just assets. It doesn't have think this through. It doesn't have GMC, Google Merchant Center, connected to it. So there's no feed. And you just give it assets. Yep. And then the other campaign is just
it's basically just is this for e-commerce as well, or is this lead generation?
E-com, lead gen. I've not figured out a perfect way to do that for PMax yet, other than just really strong forms that really just weed out all the clickbots and spammers and stuff like that. I have made that work actually pretty exceptionally well for a couple accounts, but only because like the form requires like a credit check and like your social security number. Like they're not going to get through that thing. So when the lead gets through and Google is only being fed like high qualified people, it just crushes it because their competition doesn't want to try PMax because they've heard all the nightmares. So it's a huge opportunity for some accounts right now.
And going back to the what you were mentioning just before, the second thing.
Oh, so the second one would be like so you got your assets only one that doesn't have a Google Merchant Center or a product, a manual product feed attached to it. And then the other campaign is just one asset group with, or multiple asset groups with just the product feed only asset groups, but no actual assets in it. Yeah. So what happens is that one that has the assets only, that one basically captures the interest, or I'm sorry, the other way around. The asset only ones are the ones that are kind of creating the awareness, it's doing the outbound, and then that feed only one is basically capturing that. It's doing what Smart Shopping used to do really well, the remarketing part. So that's awesome. It's a nice little hack right there.
That is unreal, because that's a challenge I've been having with, and I suppose we can probably just like, as we're recording this, we'll probably just snippet stuff out. So we can have normal convos and just like mates convos, and then like if we want to use stuff for content. But yeah, that's one thing, you know, we've just been chatting about, like, you know, we chat most days, it seems, and it's just like the PMax not working seems to be like one of the big things that no one's really talking about. So that's like, you know, you're posting stuff about it on LinkedIn. I'm doing videos on it. I'm talking to clients about it, talking about prospects about it. But then at the same time, no one's, and people are actually talking about when it doesn't work, what you can do, but it isn't like some panacea silver bullet. Like, some clients it works amazing for, and you get the best results you've ever seen, and you think you're some guru. And then sometimes it doesn't work, and because you're so out of like control with so many elements, you start to go, "Am I just a fraudster?" So, man. Like, what have you like? I've released a few videos on what I do. Is I've actually started to, for some clients on some campaigns, actually revert back to a standard shopping campaign. And a smart shopping campaign, because you can still build them, and at least like set benchmarks. So at least like I'll have, you know, 30 to 90 days worth of PMax data, and then I might look back at before that and look at smart shopping or standard shopping benchmarks, and then run standard shopping again into smart shopping, and to see what the benchmarks are in terms of revenue and ROAS, just to see if this is like a PMax issue or a feed issue or any other sort of issue. Like, that's just what I'm doing on a very fundamental level before doing any sort of advanced optimizations.
It's fair, because PMax is still, I mean, it's not technically in beta, but it pretty much is still in beta. So it's not necessarily the worst idea, because it's still kind of getting things figured out. That's why I wrote that huge thing on like feature requests, like, please Google, like, this thing is nowhere near ready to be rolled out to all these accounts, and please add some of these like very basic things like filters, the ability to like shuffle asset groups and sort things. Like, they're so hard to analyze your insights, and that becomes a challenge, and it's going to get people to eventually hit that point where they say, PMax isn't good, I'm just not going to try it. That's either agencies or specific advertisers or marketers internal. It's not a good place to be.
Yeah, I've got a call after this with someone who was going really, really well with smart shopping, and then they turned their campaign to PMax, and it just died. And it's died for like months now. And now, like, I know when I'm like, they want to work with me, is that when we do start working together, I will revert back to like a conservative, smart or standard shopping, just to get revenue back in the door. Like, that's the thing. A lot of this isn't about like, how do we get PMax to work? And sometimes it's just like, how do we actually get the cash flow coming back into the business again, so they can actually pay for the stock, pay for the inventory, pay their bills, and then we can talk about these optimizations. Because so many people are just doing the port over from smart shopping to PMax, and then it just kills their business. Like, it kills their business. And how many businesses, especially in the e-com, are super reliant on Google Ads now, which is crazy.
100%.
But then they want to be like trying the new thing, but they don't have the risk mitigation to go like, what happens if this doesn't work? Like, because we only keep hearing about it is working. Like, everyone's talking about it. I'm talking about it. You're talking about it. Soul8's talking about it. Like, we're all talking about how good it is. And it is when it works. But when it doesn't, it can actually cripple or actually like destroy a business.
100%. That's exactly why I wrote the post, because I've been hearing that so much of like, hey, things are going great, sometimes for years, and we were barely touching the account. It was all on smart shopping for the most part. And then we launched PMax, and now everything's just dying, and my business is dying. What do we do about this? It's like Google to some degree. Sorry, Google, but I just got to say, you almost put the cart before the horse. You sold this as a golden ticket to like huge scale for accounts. And I can see that, and it does work for some, but not for everybody. And that's like really, I think, where the rubber meets the road, man, because you've got to have so many things in place. This is basically like an omni-channel approach inside of Google. It's Google's attempt to do omni-channel type of marketing, different top of funnel, middle funnel, etc. type of marketing. But not every account was ready for that. Not all the spend levels were up to that point. Whereas historically, as PPC advertisers, we would say, you know, let's try to monopolize bottom of funnel. Let's try to really just crush that. Once we get to a place where your risk aversion is to a certain level, your budget is ready to be scaled, and you want to get experimental, we can start trying things like putting some money to YouTube, maybe display prospecting, right? We can try more broad match, more outbound type of stuff. And now it's like, nope, you're just going to do outbound and inbound all at once with maybe the same budget you were working with. Of course, it doesn't do well. Like if you've never done DSA before, you might not have realized how bad your crawlability of your site was, how bad that SEO was, and you deprioritize that. And then all of a sudden, Google's trying to use that in PMax, and it's going, I don't know what your site represents. I don't know what these products are. Maybe you didn't give me, I mean, how often have you seen a product feed that doesn't have GTINs, like GTINs?
All the time.
So then Google doesn't even know what your products are. It can't match that to your competitors. So of course it's going to do poorly. So I just think there's so many little pieces. I would have loved it if in a perfect world, Google would have came out before PMax, or at least before forcing smart shopping to PMax. They would have just came out and said, look, you have to have, you know, solid crawlability of your site. You know, like your SEO has to be in line. Of course, they're not going to do that. But again, in a perfect world, they would have said that, because those elements really, really affect your PMax as well as your assets. How good are your images? How good are your videos? All of those are playing a part, whether you want them to or not. So it's time to really focus on that stuff if you want PMax to work.
Mate, there are so many elements there that are so potent. I actually just think, like you're saying before, the simplest thing is the omni-channel approach. People are used to Google being an inbound channel, like the search or the shopping, just like being this. And then smart shopping kind of shifted that a bit from inbound to inbound with a bit of like that prospecting, retargeting. But then PMax now has become like a super outbound prospecting channel, which at the end of the day, for some businesses is just horrible. And I'm seeing it quite often. Like, yeah, you're killing it when it's inbound and you can spend your budget, you get your return on ad spend, everything's good. As soon as you go to PMax, like you're not set or suited for outbound.
Right. Exactly.
And then, but Google doesn't know that, but they're just going to keep spending and trying to like find the algorithm. And for a lot of businesses, financially, they're quite sensitive to certain ROAS goals. They might be spending 10, 20, 30 grand a month. But ROAS, like if you've got such thin margins on products, like you don't have the flexibility to move further.
Exactly.
The other thing is like with a lot of smaller e-com businesses, this is something I noticed. I actually did a video on this as well. Is like everyone's still so focused on the front end return on ad spend. Like, oh, you know, spend $1 and get 3 back. I must get 3 back. But then maybe if you drop that down to 250 or from 400 to 350, if you have a really good follow-up sequence through Klaviyo or something else, you can get an extra 200% just through that as well. So many people, I think the problem is so many people are looking at first touch point or the first like Google's only data, which one does not help, because if you're trying to do run a business, you can't just rely on single purchases. And then secondly, with like PMax, I just think the outbound part of it just like does spend a lot of money with minimal return in the short term. And a lot of businesses don't see the impact it makes. And it might make really good impact or it might not. But the problem is a lot of times for businesses, they don't have that flexibility of 6, 8, 12 weeks to start seeing that data come in. They need it like immediately and now. And that's what they're used to with the Google products as well.
Right.
They're used to getting immediate results.
Exactly. Yep. And they're used to thinking about it in terms of keyword targeting, you know, having like 1,000 single keyword ad groups, and we're manually controlling the bids because we don't trust Google's automation. And then when they don't see that, they're thinking we're not doing anything. Yeah. And it's like, it's a different way to think about it. It's user intent targeting now. They're going after a person, not specific keywords that you're giving it. It's using that maybe as signals, like user intent signals, but that's not the sole focus. Yeah. So it's a huge a mindset shift really that's happening right now. Yeah.
And that's the problem, because there's no real understanding that things are changing. Like we've been talking about the future of advertising, like things are changing. Like we're going from this third-party cookie world to like data modeling world. We're going from, you select your keywords to Google will select your keywords. We're going from broad match modifier just to broad match. Like things are changing, but so many people are caught up. And there's no judgment here, but it's like things are being done for a certain way for all time with this stuff. But now it's just like flicking, and it's flicking so fast that so many people are like, why isn't this working? Like I'm doing what I'm supposed to. It's like, no, but there's more to it than just like this. And like those strategies you were sharing before, it's like, I didn't know those. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But like, I've been in the game for nearly 10 years, but like these are things only like people going super deep down in like API documentation figure out, which realistically Google probably doesn't want you to do.
No, exactly.
Like, and you can only get the edge by like trying to like break something on the side and just capitalize in the short term, because whilst I'm seeing a lot of upside, there's more downside. Because like the upside is, you get better results. The downside is you waste all your money.
100%.
Or you waste the client's money. And for a lot of businesses, like not all businesses are clients of ours who have like their medium, large enterprise businesses who just like the budget's just there. It's like people survive off this. So we're going to make sure that these things that you implement or we implement do get the results consistently.
100%. No, I'm pretty conflicted too, because the thought about the omni-channel thing, because I'm conflicted in that I wish it wasn't so immediate for a lot of businesses, especially the smaller ones, where they had to now prioritize things that they maybe just didn't have the resources to prioritize before, which is fair. Like content, writing new content all the time, and getting super solid SEO, working with designers on good imagery and videos. Like, those things weren't as important before because you were just focused on your bottom of funnel keywords and things were going well. And then remarketing was doing a good job as well on smart shopping side. But now, the reason I say is I'm conflicted is I don't like how immediate that was, but at the same time, a part of me, like my inner marketer, is like, it's kind of a good thing because, you kind of have to like push businesses at a certain point to prioritize those things. And this is sort of forcing businesses to be smarter than ever with how they approach their online marketing. Like now we, as PPC experts, we have to, if we're doing a good job, personally, I think, those reporting calls have to cover like source medium reports. We have to be talking about, all right, we started PMax on the 15th. Let's see how that affected direct traffic. Let's see how that affected organic traffic. Let's look at, and if we don't have it, get it, like a third-party attribution tool. So we can actually talk about metrics beyond return on ad spend. And like you said earlier, the initial like click to purchase, the first-time customer values, that's only so important. Like if you don't have LTVs, you don't have repeat purchase rate, maybe that's okay for you. But for a lot of businesses, you've got to be considering LTVs, your lifetime values, right? Your customer lifetime values. Because if you're not, and you're not looking at like your CACs, your cost per acquired customers, and you're benchmarking those two things against each other, and then directing the automation to focus and optimize for those, you're not going to be able to really compete, because that's really the future of this, is getting that stuff in there, giving that algorithm the right inputs. So I'm conflicted because I'm glad it makes businesses have to work a little harder and work smarter, but it's going to help them as long as they just dive in, and don't just try to hold on to the past, because that's not really going to help you.
I keep saying it's like a great reset. Like it's like resetting and like leveling the playing field. Like the same with like the Facebook, what was happening last year, that was a bit different. But now it's like, if you're new to the market, you can compete with the big dogs almost immediately if you do this right. But a lot of this isn't just like, I'll wait for Shopify to do their integration. Like a lot of people do wait for like a platform to do an integration or something. It's like, no, you need to get ahead of this now. Like upload your customer list, like figure out those lifetime customer values, like bring that data back in manually. Like a lot of this stuff you can just like almost hack together just to get in, because sometimes that hacked raw data, just putting it in is so much better than just waiting 6 months for a better integration or waiting to do some Zapier thing. Like we're at the start of a huge new wave. And even if you do things like 70% as good as you need to, you'll be further ahead. So many people are delaying this
Yes.
Just because, and I think like us, or me, for example, I'm delaying the lead generation for PMax. Like I did it once or twice, didn't really work, and I've been hearing horrible things. But with e-commerce, I'm like applying like a mad dog. Like I'm always doing it. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, like the reason why I'm getting amazing wins for those clients of mine is because we're still early to market. Like, early adopters in this will get the biggest upside. At the same time, early adopters will also get all the losses because like we are missing out on so much control on certain things like negative keywords, only having product only feeds, and just similar like small things like that, which do make a lot of difference at the end of the day.
Yes, exactly. And early adopters, right? Like you are going to pay for it, but you're building data. You're buying really, really valuable data, hopefully, if you set it up correctly. So it's not a bad place to be in. I mean, if you're waiting for that easy integration, so are your competitors. So you're just not really going to gain any competitive advantage. They're going to set it up the same time you are, more than likely. So gain the competitive advantage, be an early adopter, just learn get some losses in there to make some bigger wins later that your competitors won't be able to compete with, in the sense that you're going to have more historical data for those new things than they're going to have. That's a huge advantage.
Yeah. This is amazing. It's just like, even though I'm reading about it and learning and watching videos every day, like just chatting about this stuff, even my mind's being blown right now. Like, I can't even imagine what it's like for a small business owner who's like, or a business owner or a marketing manager trying to stay on top of stuff. And that's why, guys like you and I tend to get really good results, because we live and breathe it. When you've got someone who's working in an agency who's just like at their job, or a business owner who only checks it like once or twice a week, it's like, this isn't something just to have as a complementary thing to your business. Like, this could be the survival of your business, or like what makes your business thrive or capitalize larger market share. It's crazy that, even you and I are still finding difficulties in it, when like this should be a B2C. Like at the end of the day, like they do want it to be, well, it's a B2B, it's always to a business, but like they want it to be made like a consumer good that you can just like plug and play.
Exactly.
But the plug and play will also mean that you're plug and playing into how they want you to operate, rather than probably what's best practice for your own business. Because the biggest problem, and we've chatted about this before, is the future of advertising is not about the pushing of the buttons in the screen. It's about like the business consultation, the data analysis, looking at all the data beyond just Google Ads or whatever ad platform, and really making sure it aligns. But when you've got an ad platform that's only has certain points of data that it optimizes towards, it's never going to understand like business intent or business goals. And you can't, like, maybe you could type it in somewhere in the future and it's got some AI that understands, but it's never going to. Like, some of the craziest things, like, it's easy when you've got a small business and they just need leads or sales. But I've worked with like heaps of enterprise businesses that there isn't a conversion goal. It might be a traffic goal, or it might be some sort of like random ask goal that like I have no idea. And they're like, okay, well, if that is your business KPI, but PMax or other ones, like, unless I'm strategically trying to push in a certain direction, it's never going to achieve those goals. And that's what people forget. Like, whilst this is plug and play, it might not be plug and play for your business.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you look at it, I try to like look at the old stuff too, the sort of Mad Men era of advertising.
Oh,
and I think that's a good reminder, because if we were to try to, like, I don't know, look back and say, well, what if in those times as a business owner, you could have like property of a billboard, and you yourself could just automatically attach any kind of digital image up on that billboard, right? Are you going to want to sit there and try to think through all the creative ways of using a visual in order to attract customers? Well, in a sense, that's what you're trying to achieve when you do it all yourself nowadays, especially when you have a certain amount of spend. It's more complicated than that. It's not about just being somewhere. It's about being there effectively and attracting the right type of users, which requires your business insights and creativity from a human, because that's what we have now. Don't try to do the math. The math is what computers were made for. Don't try to outbid the algorithms, if you will. We're never going to do a better job than them at that, and that's fine. I don't know about you. I didn't love just doing manual bidding all the time. It didn't like make my day to do that stuff. I'd rather the computer do that. I want to be thinking about business strategy. Let's look into seasonality, market trends. How can we capitalize on that? How can we capitalize on opportunities our competitors are are giving us. Like, there's a lot more to this.
Yeah.
And as a business owner, you probably shouldn't be spending all your time like going on YouTube and just learning how to like do the most granular thing on Google Ads, because if you're spending a certain amount of money per month, hire professionals, people like us that are like super geeky. And this isn't just like a self-sell. Like, it's just, it gets to a point where like you don't contact your accountant and say like, I want you to like, you know, do it a certain way. You let the accountant do the thing. You know, I'm not saying we're accountants, but hey, you know, we manage money, so it's close enough.
Mate, that is so profound, because I'm actually going to do a video, or I've done the slides for it, of like manual versus automated bidding. And this conversation is more because of like all the future is automation. The problem with like, there's a lot of pros to manual, but the biggest con is your human bias. And you might be going down your own little rabbit hole of like doing something and try to find these 1%ers. But if you just let that go, you could spend that same amount of time and get a 20% win somewhere else in part of the business. And that's what the problem is. Everyone's looking for like the edge, but you realize like maybe the edge is maybe just increasing your prices, or maybe it's just like having a better offer, or maybe having a better landing page. Like, and so many people back in the day, and it still happens now, they try to fix business issues with like their Google Ads account, or like their landing pages and converting. It's like, what can we do on the Google Ads account? Because it seems so instantaneous that you can make changes that you can kind of bypass other parts, like fixing your landing page, fixing your business, fixing your sales process. And I think now that the fact that things are moving to more automated, you have to let go of this idea that the advertising is going to fix everything. Like, this is one cog of a great machine, and you need to make sure the machine is aligned. Because so many people just still, I see now, like they're paying me amazing money with big budgets, sending traffic to a dog shit landing page, getting leads through, like, and they're good leads, and they say, oh, the leads are high intent, but then taking weeks to contact them. And I'm like, what is going on here? So it's really reverse engineering. Like, if you're trying to do like premium on the front end, and then everything after there's like rubbish,
right?
Like, things are never going to work out. You need that same intensity every single stage. And that's why, you know, you probably do it, as do I. A lot of the time I'm spending speaking to clients about their business rather than the advertising. The advertising's 100%. Handled. Like, I've been doing this for ages. I'd be a fool if I couldn't do it. But the issue is then I'm like consulting them, like, oh, you've got to change this on your landing page, you know that? Or like, hey, like, how long is it taking a salesperson to actually call them? Or like, are you actually following up these leads? And that's where a big gap is now as well. So I'm glad that there is automation now taking away the attention from little tweaks here and there when you need to focus on the post-click or post-lead experience.
I agree. And I think it's an intimidating ask for PPC people. I mean, I know a lot of agencies that they just focus on kind of hiring entry-level people, the straight out of college. They're more affordable, but they're ambitious. And it kind of makes sense with the way a lot of agencies are run, unfortunately. Problem there is those kids probably haven't been in the world, the real world, long enough to be able to really get deep and talk about business in a way that other business owner may respect them or their opinions about things. They're going to be throwing out all the best practices for Google Ads. But again, if you're not talking omni-channel, I'm not saying you have to provide those services, but if you're not, before getting into Google Ads results, talking about how other channels are doing to some degree based on Google Analytics or some kind of internal reports, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. Because if you start the other way around, you go, okay, Google Ads, it's down. You know, it's down 20%. So let's say sales are down 20% for the last month. Blah, blah, blah. Here's why I think is going on. And then in that process of explaining, you go, well, these other channels aren't doing well either. It's going to sound like you're kind of passing the blame and pointing the finger at other things. Whereas if you start the opposite and you say, how are things going across the board from all traffic sources? Oh, look, everything is down. Well, okay, now let's talk about Google Ads. Well, it's actually up. So not only we look like rock stars because we're the only traffic channel bringing great stuff, but it also doesn't seem like we are passing the buck off. So I think it just speaks to a bigger problem. If you're not really looking at everything, you're not trying to improve your business as a whole, Google Ads will not save you. It's just not that way anymore.
Yeah. And that's a huge thing. Firstly, is having enough business experience to understand that. Like, you know, you've been doing this for 10 years.
Let's just say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm about the same. And through all that time, you work with so many businesses that you see the same issues in the accounts, but also what's not also in the account. And then you also link that up with Google Analytics or any analytics platform to actually look at the trends. And then there kind of comes a point where you actually end up, as your own business owner now, you actually end up making more money than some of your clients per month. And you start to realize, like, not only are you providing a service, but you are providing business consultation, which is further along than where their business is. And like, whilst that's not really part of the, when you're selling your services, you're not writing down business consultation. It really does become that, because a lot of people do need that support, because Google Ads, and I think this is the guy who actually taught me Google Ads years ago. The first one, he goes, once you understand this, you'll understand everything. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, you'll be able to read the stock market, business reports, everything. I'm like, okay, whatever. But now I get it, because I could just like look at numbers and just like, oh, wow, I get it all like immediately. Like I could skim stuff and pick up like the gist of it pretty fast. Yeah. And that's what happens with this. Like, even when you just jump from Google Ads back to Google Analytics, you can go like, oh, I can see where the business is at and where it's going. And so many, like, that's a big skill that people overlook. They just think like Google Analytics, oh, it's just there, let's look at some data. But it's like, you can find so much valuable gold in there of where the business is at and where it's going to go in the future.
Yeah, no, I always think in my mind, like the visual that comes up when I'm in that flow, it's like a flow state that you get to at a certain level of experience. Like you're like when you watch The Matrix and there's like a green just like going through the screen. It feels like that to some degree, because and here's just speaking to the point of, you really, if you want to take this seriously and you want to really grow this in the PPC space, for example, your business through that channel, you need people to really know what they're doing, because we have been doing it so much across so many different industries, businesses, account sizes, etc., for so long that we can get in a flow state that you just don't have access to, because you haven't done all that. You don't have that much experience, and the insights that you can get and the time savings from you not doing it yourself, of having someone get in a flow state, be able to look at those metrics and then flow through. Okay, it's like you're asking yourself questions as you're going. You're like, okay, what do I expect to see? When we made these changes, what do I expect to see? Oh, that's different. And you start like diagnosing things. And you have to go down these little rabbit holes of what's going on with search term reports. Is there best sellers that are out of stock? Your brain has to go in all directions at once, which is like really an interesting place to be, and a very valuable skill set to have that most business owners trying to do this themselves just not going to have. That's just the truth.
That insights part is probably the biggest thing I've noticed, is like the most valuable thing that no one talks about. And like the biggest client, the enterprise clients I work with, that's what they value the most. It's the insights, because anyone could look like press little buttons. Anyone could like produce a little report, but it's like, what does it mean? Like, why did we get there? What does it mean? And what are we going to do about it? And like those insights are probably the hardest thing. And anywhere I've worked in the past, it's probably the biggest struggle with either myself or other people. It's like, yeah, anyone can do like the button pushing, and anyone could probably get pretty good results, but it's like, but what does it mean, and where do you go from here? Like, people are paying you, or the work you've done is to represent the past. Like, people now pay you for the future. So what are you doing? What are the insights presenting? And a lot of times with bigger clients, like, you get amazing results and they're happy, but they need to go back to their managers or their board of directors and give feedback. So if you don't have that granular insight to like what's happening, or market trends, or like where things are going, or why they're up and down, and why that's actually okay that they're down, you're not going to be confident about it. And then like the client won't be confident. And if you're a business owner, a lot of the time they just go, I'm just going to turn this off. But then things aren't just turn off, turn on as well. So there's
100%.
So much. Yeah. And that's the thing that like even this person I'm going to be jumping on a call in 20 minutes with is they've just turned off their whole account. Like, this is the lifeblood of their business. And it's like, wow, like, like it just goes to show like there's a lot of reliance on this, but there's also a lot of, I wouldn't say ignorance, but just like misunderstanding about how things are done and how they should be done. And the best practice, it's not like you and I are coveting some like hidden occult secrets. It's just like, we're just dudes who do this all. It's like going to a doctor versus doing the home surgery itself. It's like, let's go see a doctor. Like, like you could try to spend like 30 hours on like WebMD, or you could just go him and he just goes, oh yeah, this and this, just take this cream. You're like, oh bless, thank you.
Right. And we've all been in that place where we like do the WebMD thing, we like research ourselves into this anxiety, and then we're like self-diagnose. We go to the doctor and hopefully they say like, no, you're fine, this is not a big deal. You're like, oh, I just worried about this for no reason. That often happens in this too. And maybe this whole conversation is just like us justifying our existence or something. But I think the proof against that is like, when you have that, so a business owner pauses the account, they pause all their campaigns, maybe they fired their agency or something. how does the business go after that? How about when you're managing yourself? Are you noticing results? Generally, they don't get better when you fire your agency, but there's going to be exceptions to that. But yeah.
The other thing is, like, especially in the e-commerce space, like talking about the seasonality before, there is quite a seasonality with the e-commerce trends, especially like with Black Friday sales and coming up to Christmas, which everyone knows about the upside of that, but no one really understands like the downside of when it starts to trickle down in the new year. Now, a lot of my clients actually still tend to go well in Jan and Feb, but it's around March I notice there's a bit of a drop, and no one talks about that. Everyone talks about get ready for your Black Friday sales, get all your products and updates and offers and budgets and all that. But then when it comes to like, you know, there's also a lag effect. People are buying stuff that they probably weren't going to buy just because it's cheaper. So sooner or later, those customers that you would have had 3 or 4 months later have already purchased. I actually like learned that in that book Pricing, which you told me about. And that's the thing. If you discount things too much at a certain point, you're only like borrowing customers from the future. So like, yeah, you might get this, but it will drop down, and people don't understand that. And then they go, what's going wrong with my account? And then you just got to go, I see it. It's almost like an energy wave. It's like up and then it goes down. It happens with all the clients. I'm like, this is where having someone like you or I, just like, you can actually see this across like 10, 20, 30 accounts in e-commerce and go, oh yeah, this is just this trend. But when you're isolated in your own little head running your account by yourself, you're like, what's happening to my business? You're freaking out. You think short-term results mean that's how the business is going forever.
Yep. Great example. Yesterday, the day before yesterday, I was on a consulting call. I've been consulting this guy for a while, but his head is, he's like very impatient. He's very entrepreneurial, which is a good quality for that, but not when you're managing your Google Ads accounts. You need a lot of patience, but I get it. And it's like, I told him it's easy for me to say, because it's not my money that we're spending here, but when you go in and you pause a campaign that's working on an algorithm that takes a while to ramp up, and you pause it, or you make some giant change, like a bidding strategy change to PMax, let's say you go on max conversion value, then you set it to your ROAS. Like, he doesn't understand the consequences of a decision that for the whole business. And he goes, well, yeah, because we had a couple days here and there where we didn't make any profit. And it's like, right, but this is where you need someone like me, because when you zoom out and you look at an aggregate, Google's still trying stuff. It's testing different things within that time. And in aggregate, and through a longer date range, you're profitable. Things are actually trending up. But now you've gone and made this mistake that you just, of course you weren't aware, because that's a very technical thing. You have to intuit that kind of stuff to some degree. There's no real guidebook around which thing's going to really impact this account or not, because every business is different. And every account behaves differently because of that. It's those kind of things. You still really need to have someone that can at least keep you in check and say, relax. Like, I know yesterday was not a good day, but let's zoom out 30 days. How are things going? They're going really well, and they're trending up. So it's like data analysis skills missing. Yep.
That is really important. That's the problem with short-term reviewing data in the short term being like 2, 7, or 14 day. Like, at minimum, like, definitely know your numbers on a daily basis, because they will show something, but like, look at it on a monthly trend at least, just because that will show, like, let's just say you have a week that's really bad, but overall the month's up. But if you're turning things down because the week was bad, like, you're missing out on all those sales. Sometimes as well, this is a big concept. It's crazy. People don't buy immediately. People do have a buying cycle, their own buying cycle of like, even just like, not even before they say the product's like clicking. And then they might take a few days and come back. So you might be just going through a cycle, and it sucks when this is at that point where people are just researching, and then next week you have a boom and you're like, yeah, it's all good. But it's like, you had to invest last week or 2 weeks before for that. That's why Google's like almost forcibly changing us to data driven, because there isn't a last click model anymore. Like, there's no one click, one buy. So like, when going back to that, I understand that, because I have so many clients in the past and even presently who go, oh, this week isn't good, but I'm like, the month's really good, and the last 3 months have been really good. Like, this is what happens. And sometimes I've got to like counsel them and give them therapy on why this is. And like, I get it and I understand, but at the same time, it's like, you're running a business, you should understand there's fluctuations. If you're running a physical store and you had like 3 or 4 days without people coming in, you still got all those fixed and variable costs, and you wouldn't be going, oh, I need to shut down the store now. It's like, no, you just need to like understand that this is what's happening.
100%. Like it's those data analysis concepts like interweek seasonality, right? Weekend buying behavior versus Mondays or something like that. It's the intermonth seasonality. Maybe the beginning of the month if your consumable is high and sales are lower at the end. The algorithms figure that stuff out. They don't know why that's working, but they'll figure it out. It's just the way they work. But if you're pulling the plug on looking at something from 2 days ago, and you're not considering like the time lag report, like your conversion time lag, and not all your conversions are usually reported the same day. Almost never. Actually, at the very bottom, it'll say this is not real time data. It's there 24/7, but it's very small. Maybe people forget to look at that, but it's a true thing. It's not all there. That's why it's important to have back-end systems to kind of check it. But you have to consider all those things. How long is the average sales cycle for someone like you mentioned? If it's an expensive product, don't expect to look at yesterday and figure out how sales are doing. Or to my example about going from maximize conversion values to ROAS, you were doing a bid strategy, maximize conversion value, that was doing a lot of, especially in PMax, was doing a lot of outbound. It was growing and building an audience that was probably clicking and they're interested. Maybe they're highly interested. They just didn't get paid yet until Friday, and they were going to come back and buy. Potentially, maybe they needed a couple more marketing messages, but then what you did when you switched to ROAS, you just killed all those audiences. You just said to the algorithm, don't go after those people anymore if you didn't get enough signal data, that's pattern data that says, keep going after them and narrow them into this ROAS type of bid strategy. So it's those little things that are so important, but aren't really talked about as much, I think, because they're a little bit more complicated.
This is probably the worst thing to say to someone who's like, you and I who are data driven and also business owners who rely on the money. But a lot of this, especially PMax, relies on a bit of faith and trust, two words that are not aligned with data. But you've got to have the faith and trust that once you've got those high intent signals coming in, being previous sales, website traffic, whatever your custom data coming in, that you let that run. Like that is real conversion data for your business, or real outcome-based data for your business, that in the short term, it may not look good, but in like maybe 3 to 6 to 8 weeks, you'll get amazing results. Like I know with all my e-com clients, I start with the same PMax strategy for all of them. It's one catch-all for all their products. Might segment down on different types of product ranges if they're quite significantly different. And then I'll just use the signal would just be like sales from the last 90 or 180 days. Hopefully like there's quite like hundreds or thousands of sales. And then even on an advanced level, I'd be doing, in analytics, you can actually build segments. And then with segments, you can actually so I could go like, anyone who's bought these products, put them into a segment, then turn that into an audience, and then that audience back to analytics. So I only start off with high intent audiences, like people who have bought or people who've been to the site like the last 7 or 30 days. That always works for me. Then I build from there. But that for me still requires faith and trust. I trust that it will work in the long run, but it's not an overnight thing. The problem with Google Ads as well is I'm speaking on behalf of you, we're so conditioned to getting results overnight. Like the longer you do it, the better you get. You're like, I could just I've got like this magical touch. I could put a few keywords together and get leads and sales immediately. But this is the thing that you don't get sales. Well, you can get sales immediately, but you don't get it at the volume and the return on ad spend immediately. And that sometimes is a bit of I have to recondition myself of faith and trust that this will work, and best practice will get best results.
100%. I think people that have done advertisers who have done Facebook ads in the past, or any kind of real, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snap, whatever it is, if you've done that, you've actually already trained your brain to say, I know this is going to take time. We're putting a billboard out there, and not everyone that sees this is going to really be that interested. And we're in a place like social channels where people are going to avoid these advertisements, just to avoid all this stuff. They just want to be in a zone where they're relaxing, they're enjoying taking in cool content, whatever. They're engaging and talking and having conversations, and then there's an advertisement. So they're already trained in that way. So if they've done social ads, I think it's actually advantageous for them to transition to PMax, because their mindset is, I get it. This thing needs to build data. It might take 3 to 6 months before we can even see the potential for it to do well. That's cool. I get it. We got to kind of pay for the data to get really good results. But if you don't have that experience, it's not always going to be the case. You're going to be, if you've just done Google ads and maybe Microsoft ads in the past, you are used to it being very immediate as a feedback loop. well, it's going to be something you got to kind of drain your brain out of and look at the
Well,
future.
it's because just for years, it's been inbound, high intent, proactive. Someone's proactively looking for you in that moment. So you're used to that instant gratification versus all these other ones. They're disruptive mediums. And then they will, like, you understand that it does take time. Just conscious of time right now, we might just wrap this up. So thanks for your time, mate, on this.
Of course,
and we'll finish this up.
All right, sounds good.
Awesome, man.